Welcome back to The Door in the Wall by Marguerite D'Angeli. When we last left our friend Robin, he and his friends, Brother Luke and John Go in the Wind, had just outsmarted some thieves. The next morning, the weather cleared, and by the end of the fourth day, the spires of Oxford appeared. Before long, they crossed the Cherwell into the High Street. Everywhere Robin looked, there were students, walking about or talking on street corners. They filled the punts and barges that crowded the two rivers. They sprawled under the park trees, eating bread and cheese. But wherever they were, they talked and talked and talked. Most of the students were poor and were dressed in every sort of parti-colored gown or tunic. "Seems to me," said Robin, "as if they try to see how outlandish they can make themselves look." The travelers went up the High, then turned on past the Saxon Tower and the market cross to St. John's College, where they were received with courtesy and where they spent the night. Beyond Oxford, the country began to be more rolling. Sometimes the road led through forests, then again it ran beside the river, crossed a bridge, and went up through a village. Once they had to turn aside and allow a cavalcade of horsemen to pass. It swept by in a fine parade of shining mail, bright banners, and gaily caparisoned horses. In their midst rode a lady with her attendants. Robin wished the lady had been his mother. Where was his mother now? Did she know about him and where he was? Did she know he walked with the help of crutches? They followed the cavalcade up the winding road to the top of the hill, where there was a sign announcing a fair at Witchwood Beck. "There will be jousting," said Robin. "There will be dancing," said John Go in the Wind. "And there will be little praying," said Brother Luke. "There will be no room at the inn, so we must not linger long." "Oh, let us see a little of the fun," begged Robin. So they turned aside and spent some hours at the fair, tethering the horses near the gate, giving a penny to a lad for watching them. All the country people had come from miles around. They had brought cattle and sheep, dairy butter and cheese, whatever had been their portion after giving what was due to the lord of the manor. Lombards from Europe were there with goods from far-off lands. There were silks and velvets from Italy and France, laces from Flanders. Robin wanted to be everywhere at once. He wanted to watch the tournament, the bear baiting, the wrestling, and the racing. He wanted to taste all the food, the pigeon pies, the honey tarts, that suckling pig with the apple in its mouth, and the jugged hare. He flitted from one booth to the other, with Brother Luke after him. Finally, Brother Luke said, "Hast seen enough, lad? It is a good way to the next hospice, they tell me, and we have 2 or 3 days' journey ahead of us. So come, my son." "Let me see only the rest of the Punch and Judy, then," agreed Robin, "and I shall be willing, for I have never seen anything so funny." "For that only, then," said the friar, and went to find John, who had been playing tunes and earning a few extra farthings from the dancers. By night of that day they reached an abbey set in a hollow. Its square tower stood above the trees in sign of welcome to the travelers, who were most grateful for the hospitality of the abbot. He told them of the best road to their destination and of the deep wood through which they would pass. There was frost on the ground when they started out next day. They had been a week on their journey, and according to the abbot's counsel, they still had 2 days or more to go. Great rolling hills began to appear, and over them hung clouds filled with rain. And rain it did before the hour was out. Then When they had begun to enter the wood that embraced the hill, it slackened, and the sun came out. "Let us halt here for our midday food," said John, whose jerkin was wet because his cloak had been left hanging out the window of the White Hart. "Here I shall build a fire to warm us and dry our clothes." "Let us hope we are not overtaken by marauding Welsh," said the friar hopefully, "for we are at the border. We shall say the office to remind us in whose care we are, here as well as everywhere." They knelt in the woods as if it had been a cathedral, as indeed it looked to be. For the trees, bare of leaves, arched overhead in the very same way that the groined arches of stone swept up high overhead in the Gothic churches. Maybe that is where the idea came from, thought Robin. The fire felt comforting and warm. There was no ale, and only one withered apple left, but water flowed in the river hard by, from which John filled the leather flagons. After they had eaten, John sang a ballad while he dried his clothes. Then Robin asked if he might try the harp, and John showed him how to hold it and pluck the strings. But it was not so easy as it appeared. John promised to teach him. "By all accounts," said Brother Luke, "this forest goeth for miles, and it may well be that we shall not come out of it by nightfall." "Now I remember this wood," said John, nodding his head, "though it was but once I went through it. It is of great size, but there is a woodman's cottage, I recall, wherein we can shelter for the night. I found the woodman and his good wife courteous and kindly folk, willing to share what they have." "Let us be on our way," said Robin, "now that we are near to our journey's end. I wish to see my godfather, Sir Peter de Lindsay. Think you that he is a good man, as my father says, John Go-in-the-Wind? Will he want me now to stay with him? For how shall I be an esquire or even a page?" Robin was thoughtful. "It is well known in the country round about that he is a gracious master and a noble knight," said John. "His lady, too, is well loved for her goodness to the poor." "Fear not, my son," the friar assured him. "Thou'lt find kind friends in thy new home." All afternoon the way continued through the forest, yet there was no sign of its coming to an end. The dusk began to fall, and the howl of a wolf sent shivers down Robin's spine. Still, no woodsman's hut appeared, and there was naught but forest trees and brush on every hand. Finally, when it was so dark they could hardly see the path, Robin pointed out a feeble light. "See, there, through the trees," he said, "a small cottage. That must be the place." John sighed in relief. "Then I was not mistaken. It is the woodsman's cottage where we shall lodge tonight." "How welcome the hearth and fire will be," declared Brother Luke. "Let us hope we shall be as welcome." "By my faith, if we be not welcome, then the serf is an ingrate. For when I passed this way before, I helped yon woodman bind up the wound he'd gotten from a fallen axe. Then I carried him on my back to the cot where the woman tended him." The woodcutter and his wife made them welcome, and shared gladly what they had. The ale was well brewed, and there was peas porridge and bread for supper. Then John played the little harp, and sang. The next morning, well refreshed, the three voyagers set out on the last leg of their journey. The weather was neither fair nor rainy, neither hot nor cold, but somewhere in between, as English weather is like to be, said the friar. When true daylight arrived, they had come to the edge of the wood, and now the hills stood all about, being very high toward the north, where the Welsh mountains loomed in the blue distance. For the most part, the road lay low among the hills, winding in and out, following the river. A heavy mist hung over the valley so thick it was like a white blanket, which parted only enough for the next step to be seen, then closed in again. When wayfarers were met, it was as if they had appeared by magic out of nowhere. Once, when the road was narrow, a group of peasants suddenly came out of the mist and stopped to ask their way. Their speech was very strange to Robin, but John Go-in-the-Wind seemed to know what they said, for he directed them in the same strange tongue. They are Welsh, he explained, and have wandered out of their way in the fog. My mother was Welsh, so I know some of the words. There is much trouble with the Welsh along the border here, but these seem like harmless folk. Late in the afternoon, a breeze suddenly sprang up. In a few moments, the mists lifted and the air cleared. Robin looked up in amazement, for there, rising high against the racing clouds, stood a town with a church tower and castle complete. It was Lindsay. Look, he cried, look, there it is. We have arrived. 'Tis true, agreed John, 'tis as I hoped. We have arrived before sundown and can enter the castle before the gate is closed. Now, thanks be to him who guided us aright, said Brother Luke devoutly, blessing himself. Lindsay it is surely, said John, for only Lindsay stands so on a mound ringed with hills, like a pudding in a saucer. We've but to cross yon bridge, go up the hill and through the town gate, and we are there. From the market cross, 'tis but a step to the castle gate. It is a happy end to our journey. Beyond the town and castle lives my own mother. They crossed the bridge and started up the hill. Now that he was so near to his destination, Robin dreaded the meeting with Sir Peter. What sort of welcome would he have, limping as he was on crutches? What sort of page could he be, having no free hands for service? Robin need not have been afraid. As soon as they had passed through the outer gate, a messenger went swiftly ahead of the travelers to announce them. The drawbridge was down, and the gate opened to them without question, and they were received in the great hall as if they had been emissaries of the king. Sir Peter was scarcely recovered from his wounds. He sat in a high-backed chair near the fire, where Lady Constance sat at her embroidery frame with a small girl leaning against her knee. Nearby were her ladies and two little boys who romped with the hounds. When the travelers entered the hall, Lady Constance rose and, drawing the children about her, stood beside Sir Peter to greet them. It is a true pleasure to welcome you into our household, said Sir Peter to Robin, not seeming to notice that Robin could not straighten. We are grateful to this good friar for his care of you, and to John Go-in-the-Wind, who is known to us. This is Lady Constance and our daughter Allison, and these are my two sons, Henry and Richard. Lady Constance warmly embraced Robin, crutches and all. We have long awaited your coming, dear child, and now we are most happy that you have safely arrived. I shall make a sorry page, my lady, said Robin ruefully, but I can sing, and I can read a little to while away the time for your lordship, he offered, and I can pen letters for you. Sir Peter kept Robin's hand in his and spoke directly to him. Each of us has his place in the world, he said. If we cannot serve in one way, there is always another. If we do what we are able, a door always opens to something else. There it was again, Robin thought, a door. He wondered what Sir Peter meant, whether Sir Peter meant the same thing that Brother Luke had intended. Each of the travelers was assigned to his own place. Robin was to have a chamber in the keep. The friar was to be lodged in a little room over the chapel in the inner ward of the castle, and John Go-in-the-Wind was given quarters over the outer entrance gate. Before leaving the hall, he asked a favor. By your leave, he said, I would like to visit my old mother, who lives not far away. but I shall stay here a while until my young master finds his way about." Now that he was well received, Robin found everything about Lindsay exciting and interesting. The view from the top of the keep, where they went in the morning, was breathtaking. "I can see for miles in every direction," he said excitedly. "Surely no enemy could attack without being seen by the watch." Didst forget the fog?" asked John Go-in-the-Wind, who had accompanied him. "And look yonder," said Adam, the bowman, who stood watch that day. "See that tiny moving spot in the field?" At first, Robin could not find anything that moved in the open field to which Adam pointed. Then he was just able to make out the figure of a shepherd and a flock of sheep. After a great deal of Adam's directing and pointing, he could see a woodcutter emerging from the trees by the river. "By night, or under cover of mist," said Adam, "a whole army could creep over the hill and through forest without being seen. 'Tis from the north and west that we look for trouble. Lord Jocelyn to the west hath long coveted this domain, and Sir Hugh Fitzhugh to the north yonder, who is cousin to Sir Peter, hath a quarrel with him." "But they could not take so strong a castle, surely," said Robin. "We can be starved out," said Adam. From the other side of the tower, Robin could look down upon the town and the church roof, and see clearly how the church was shaped like a cross. He could see the roof of the market cross in the open square, and the people walking about. He could see the bend of the river and the two bridges, one leading west and one to the south, where they had crossed yesterday. To the north, the ground fell straight away down to the river, more than 100 feet below. "My mother's cottage is there," said John, pointing north, "over the hill and into the next valley." Robin could see where the tower of the village church showed above the trees. Beyond, he could see the manor house against a dark forest which crowned the hills far, far away. "Is it near to the village where yon church tower stands?" asked Robin. "Aye, 'tis just there this side of the church. A tidy bit of a house on the heath, where she lives alone with her cat. There is a path all the way. If thou'rt to call upon her, she would bake thee a bannock." Robin repeated the directions, but laughed at the thought of going all that way to make a visit. "Go you by that road I see, leading up from the river here?" he asked again. "No," said John, "for 'tis a long way round by Leatham Bridge. I go through the town and by the Drovers' Road and across the ford beyond." It was more difficult for Robin to go down the circular stair from the top of the keep than it had been to go up. Each step was set on a center newel, and the steps fanned out from it. Robin had to keep to the outside wall to allow room for the crutches to spread far enough to bear his weight. John went ahead of him to catch him in case he should fall. "I shall get the way of it soon," said Robin. Before the day was out, he found it easier. They had gone up and down, stair after stair, up to the watchtowers in the belfry of the chapel, to the kitchens and storerooms, to the armory, and down to the dungeons. Then John took Robin to the stables to see the horses. There were dappled Percherons from France, and shire geldings of tremendous size, built to bear the weight of men in armor. There were lighter animals for hunting, hawking, and riding, and others still smaller, like the jennet Robin had ridden. Robin thought the gray one looked like his father's favorite. How he wished he might ride it, going astride properly as he should. Would he ever again be able to mount a horse? Would he be able to practice in the tilting yard or go a-hawking? Would he ever stand straight and tall? Last of all, they went to the workshop near the stables. There the yew bows were made and repaired. Staves for lances and pikestaffs were cut. Such small things as plates, cups, bowls, and platters were made by the turners in the town. arrows were made by the Fletchers. "It is here we shall make the little harp," said John. "Can we make it soon?" asked Robin. "We shall begin tomorrow, if I can find the wood," promised John. As soon as Robin was settled in the household of the castle, he was taken in hand again by Brother Luke, who laid out a plan of study and recreation for him that would fit in with the duties assigned to him as page. Sir Peter had explained that he would expect Robin to attend to everything which it was possible for him to do. Part of each day was spent with Adam the yeoman shooting at a mark, part of the day in studying Latin. Evenings after supper, the household servants, pages, craftsmen, and all those not on watch gathered about the fire in the great hall, where Piers Nightingale or John told tales or sang ballads. Every day the friar took Robin down the long path to the river to swim. The water was cold as ice and swift flowing, but now Robin had learned to grit his teeth and plunge in. It should have been one of his duties to serve at the high table, where Sir Peter and the Lady Constance sat with other members of the family and visiting nobles, but because it was so difficult for him to carry things, he was excused from that, and was required only to see that his lady was well looked after, and the little boys were helped with the cutting of their meat and breaking of the bread for sopping. One of the hounds that searched for bones among the straw litter learned to come to Robin for tidbits, seeming to know that he had found a special friend. Robin was careful to find bones from the joint with juicy bits of meat still clinging to them, and soon he was Robin's friend. He even slept by Robin's bed instead of near the fire in the hall with the other dogs, and followed him everywhere. His name was Daff, because he had been brought from a town in Flanders of that name. One day in late October, as the friar walked with Robin along the side of the hill leading down to the river, Daff following, Robin stopped in the path. "Think you it is really helping my legs to swim?" he asked anxiously. "I cannot straighten my back, and can walk only as before, halfway bent over. What think you, Brother Luke? Shall I ever straighten?" "I know not what to think about that," Brother Luke sighed. Then he lifted his head and said firmly, "God alone knows whether thou'lt straighten or no. I know not. But this I tell thee, a fine and beautiful life lies before thee, because thou hast a lively mind and a good wit. Thine arms are very strong and sturdy. Swimming hath helped to make them so, but only because thou hast had the will to do it. Fret not, my son, none of us is perfect. It is better to have crooked legs than a crooked spirit. We can only do the best we can with what we have. That, after all, is the measure of success, what we do with what we have. Come, let us go on." Robin nodded slowly, then said hopefully, "Peter the bowman says I have a good arm for the bow and a keen eye for the mark. I can put an arrow up quite well for a beginner, he says." "And how goeth the woodworking?" asked the friar. "John Go-in-the-Wind is helping me to shape the base of the little Saxon harp. It is to be almost like his, but is to have my own mark. Where the front block holds the thin maple in a curve, his is plain. Mine shall have tracery. He bent the maple around an oval-shaped form whilst it was green. And meantime, John is showing me how to shape and smooth the post, which is the upright. It too is of maple, but it is well seasoned and beautifully marked. From a deer that Adam the bowman killed, we are drawing gut for the strings." "Thou art becoming a true craftsman," said the friar, "and wilt be able to play the harp when 'tis done?" "Already I can pick out part of the tune of Ka, the Yaws, and can sing it as well. It is sad, but pleasant to hear. When I learn it all, I shall sing it for my Lady Constance, and when I see my mother again, I shall sing it for her." Robin stopped for a moment, then went on thoughtfully. "Think you my mother will know me when she sees me thus?" "Thy mother will know and love thee always, my son," the friar assured him, "whether thou'rt bent or straight, well or ill, knight or clerk, lord or minstrel." Oh, when would he see his mother? Where was she now? October had passed in lingering summer warmth, but with the coming of November, there was often fog and rain. When it cleared, raw winds swept down from the north, whistling through corridors and hall, sending up whirls of dust in the courtyard, billowing the tapestries that hung on the wall. Brother Luke took Robin each day, as before, to swim. They followed the path to a place near Letham Bridge. "It will be good for thee, even in the chilly autumn weather," he comforted, when Robin shivered at the thought of the icy water. "It sends the blood flying through thy veins to warm thee. Besides, it strengthens thy body, and, best of all, it strengthens thy spirit to do a hard thing." Robin was now quite strong, although he could not straighten. He was able to go about easily from keep to tower, from hall to chapel, from turret to dungeon. Even the twisting stairs held no terror for him, because he had learned to place the crutches carefully and swiftly, where they would hold and balance him. He could play games with the boys in the courtyard, shooting at a mark, hide-and-go-seek, and duck on a rock. Robin's keen eye and strong arms helped him to send the duck, a small pointed stone, so far he could easily get to the goal and back before the other boys could retrieve the duck. "Aw, no fair," cried Dennis one day. "You can go twice as fast as we can on those 7-league boots of yours." Robin only laughed and played the harder. Many times a day he went in and out the castle gate, and he'd already made friends with Allen at gate. Allen was a gruff old fellow, for he was long hours in attendance on duty, and was responsible for the safety of all within the castle. He challenged everyone who passed, whether going in or coming out, demanding to know his business. Robin soon learned that Allen at gate had a soft side as well as a rough one. Once, when he had come on Allen unawares, he heard him playing the flageolet. Robin told him about the Saxon harp he was making. Robin discovered, too, that Allen liked sweets, so he kept a good supply of honey cakes in his pocket for largesse. He was allowed to come and go through the gate whenever he liked, with Dath at his heels. "Now that the castle is well known to thee, and thou'rt well started on making the harp, it is time for me to visit my old mother," said John Go-in-the-Wind to Robin. "Dost know how to go on with the harp?" "Yes, I am sure I do," answered Robin. "It is a secret I wish to keep, and if I need help, Brother Luke can give it me. William Wise, the farrier, is making the tool of hardened iron, as you asked him to do. I shall be careful to make the holes and the pegs for the strings to fit. Let me see once more how they go, and how many there are." John showed Robin the graceful instrument, and how the 7 strings were fastened with tiny pegs in the maple sounding board, which covered the hollow oval base. He showed him how they were drawn tightly to the upper arm of the harp by wooden keys, which just fitted the tapered holes tightly enough so that they stayed whichever way they were turned. "'Twill not be easy to get the keys exactly like the holes," he cautioned. "No," said Robin, "but I can do it. I know I can." "Thou canst but try," said John. "Anyone can not do it." Robin went with John across the courtyard to the outer gate. Dost know where to find me in case of need?" asked John. "Yes," said Robin, mimicking the way John had told it to him. "'Tis over the path beyond the river, across yon field, and through the forest, then fording the stream, and up another field, through another wood, and 'tis just there, this side of the church in the village of Tripheath. A tidy bit of a house on the heath, where she lives with her cat, and if thou'rt there, she'd bake thee a bannock." John laughed. "That's the right of it," he agreed. "And now, farewell, young master." John slung his pack and the harp across his back and was gone. Early that same day, mists began to rise, which later became a thick fog. Little could be seen from watchtower or wall, but a blank whiteness covering everything. Even the outer walls of the castle were hidden from the watchman at the top of the keep. When Robin crossed the outer bailey, going from the workshop along the wall to the inner castle gate, he could see only a few steps ahead. Sometimes he could scarcely see Dath, who was close at his heels. Sometimes heads appeared out of nowhere, or legs, walking along as if they were unattached. When Robin reached the drawbridge and started to cross, Alan at Gate's voice shouted the challenge. Even though the voice was familiar, it sounded ghost-like and strange to Robin as it came out of the fog. "Who goes there?" said the voice. "'Tis I, Robin," came the answer as Robin crossed the moat and passed under the portcullis. "This be a treacherous cloud of mist," said Alan at Gate as Robin entered. "Will there be danger in it, think you?" asked Robin. "Aye, danger enough," said Alan gravely. "The Welsh, yonder, long have wanted this castle, for it be strong. Now, with fog to help, and so few to guard the walls, there is chance they might get it. God forbid." "If my father would only come with his men, it would be safe," declared Robin. "He is the strongest knight in the king's bodyguard, and Alfred the Dane is his finest bowman. Alfred can shoot out the eyes of an owl at 200 paces. While he boasted, Robin's eyes shone. "But," he ended sadly, "neither Alfred nor my father is here." When supper was served in the great hall that evening, there were few gathered to eat it, because every man was on guard, and only the womenfolk and the children kept Sir Peter company. The two pages, Dennis and Lionel, attended them, and Robin, as usual, sat between Lady Constance and the two little boys. Dath and the other hounds seemed ill at ease. They paced up and down the hall, settled themselves in the rushes on the floor, only to rise and begin walking about again. "Down, Dath," commanded Robin. "Quiet, Roy. Be still, Nance," Dennis ordered. They dropped to the floor for a moment, but were soon moving again. Not even the bones kept them quiet for more than a short time. Lady Constance talked pleasantly with her ladies, but Sir Peter seemed to be always listening. While they were still at table, there was a sudden commotion. Shouts and cries from the inner ward came up through the windows, and a sound of running feet pounded along the passage. Sir Peter started from his chair. Adam the yeoman came bursting into the hall, so hurried with ill news that he scarcely stopped to bob his head before speaking. "Your lordship," he began, out of breath, "we are attacked. The Welsh are hammering at the town gate. They have slain the watch by creeping close to the wall in the fog. They waited for him to turn, then put an arrow in his back." "'Tis come, then," said Sir Peter, reaching for the great sword which hung on the wall. "What strength are they? Is it known?" "It is hard to say," said Adam. "They make a great noise about the walls, but naught can be seen for the fog. They have built fires under the south gate, and flambeaux glow on all sides, so I fear we are surrounded. Gather every man not armed into the inner bailey, where they will be provided with longbows and arrows, directed Sir Peter. To Lady Constance he said, "You, my dear wife, gather all the women and children into the keep. Have them bring clothing and pallets. There at least we have water in the well, and 'tis a strong fortress." "Yes, my husband," Lady Constance said obediently, rising and gathering the children to her, while her ladies hastily collected embroidery frames, cloaks, and fripperies. The two pages, Dennis and Lionel, carried the food from the table, then took the table boards from the trestles and transferred everything to the hall of the keep. The keep was close to the gatehouse, between the inner and outer ward, so there was great excitement in the courtyard. "What can I do?" asked Robin. "Will you care for the little boys?" asked Lady Constance. "Little Allison shall come with us." "Yes," promised Robin, "each can hold to my jerkin, so we shall keep together among the yeomen." When the boys had been safely delivered to the keep, Robin remembered the little harp, which lay unfinished in the workshop under the south wall. He must get it and keep it safe too. Before morning, the walls of the town had been breached, and before the day was out, the town was taken. When the portcullis of the outer bailey of the castle was raised to admit the yeomen, the townspeople swarmed in. Allen at gate directed the dropping of the heavy iron gate, and it came down so quickly that the last man to enter narrowly missed having his head chopped off.